Hello friends, welcome to part 6, and before we get started, a correction is in order, brought to us by my lead editor, MJ Gallagher, who is also very kindly supporting me on Patreon at the night level, along with Matthew Caveat Zealot. $5 for exclusive content and early access. Beat the rush, why don't you? It's funny, because Beat Rush is the name of a limit break that Cell uses. Anyways, he points out that in my last video, I made a joke about how Tifa was older than Cloud, and that led into a really uninteresting paragraph-long diversion about my brief thoughts on the whole love triangle debate. It isn't true. I was wrong. Aerith is actually the older girl, not Tifa. Of course she is. Of course Tifa is younger, Micah. How did you mess that up? Oh, now on with today's show, and oh man, this episode's, this is a juicy one. So last time, I mentioned how Gallagher built up the secretive mystery girl, who we of course know to be Cloud, but he doesn't linger longer than he needs to. We get that payoff immediately at the beginning of the chapter, and this is one of those times where I think immediate payoff is the best way to go. Now usually I prefer a slow build-up that lasts on and you can finally get that payoff at the end, but he seems to really understand that that wouldn't have worked here. It's such a good effect going right immediately into that at the start of the chapter. The chapter break there doesn't seem random. It seems well planned out. So, I like it. And let me just go ahead and show you how he starts it off, just to give you an idea of how this works. This is from the top of page 96. I can't believe this is your plan. Cloud stared at his reflection in the clothes shop mirror, shaking his head in disgust as he let the dress unfurl over the ground at his feet, hiding his army boots under plates of blue cotton. The costume clung to his figure, taut over the braces and belt of his outfit underneath, but the shape of the leather accessories added to his illusionary bust. Around him he sensed the bemused smirk of other customers, a muffled laughter coming from a group of aged women at the far side of the store. "You're worried about Tifa, aren't you?" Aerith responded, unable to wipe the smile from her face as he fought to tie the red bow around his waist. Okay, now, not to court controversy. I'm going to be doing that a lot in this review, let me let you know that. But the entire section of Cloud's cross-dressing scene has been deemed problematic by some people in the modern day, at least without context. I'm not going to rehash an argument argued much better by people far smarter than I. But what I'm trying to get across here is that Gallagher's version immediately provides context for this scene with this opening. It's not, oh, look, a guy is dressing up like a girl. That's not what's supposed to happen. The humor in the scene comes from Cloud's personal embarrassment about the subject. It's clear he doesn't want to do this, and the scene creates a claustrophobic and judging atmosphere immediately. So we all get, oh, this is about being put in a situation he's uncomfortable with. So, bravo, Gallagher, for setting us off on the right foot here. Now, the entire scene where they are dolling up Cloud is actually hilarious, and this is another one of those read the entire scene moments, but Gallagher slowly begins to add on to Cloud's frustration. Oh, you need a wig? Hey, we got a wig! And then Aerith begins assaulting him with makeup. It's actually one of the funniest scenes he's written so far. The tension and humiliation is palpable, and by the time she tells him he needs to walk nicer, you can feel him boiling over. It's hilarious. So, one good groping later, they make it into Corneo Mansion. No, seriously, some dude grabs Cloud's ass and comments, firm. I'm probably reading way too much into this, but it seems like a direct counterpoint to the reference from Zidane from FF7 when he grabs Garnet's butt and goes, ooh, soft. That's probably just me. I like that scene. So, time for another one of those description porn quotes from page 98. He brought them to the main hall of the manor, the grand mahogany doorway opening into the expanse. The tiled floor of the foyer sparkled with polish, bare but for an enormous circular oriental rug at the foot of the broad staircase. The maroon rug had been woven in the form of a giant aquatic serpent wrapped around a golden sword, a representation of the water god Leviathan, and the crest of Wutai. Emblems and insignias of ancient cultures had been painted over the walls in colors of deep red and orange, their meanings long forgotten in an age of science. 2 huge urns had been set opposite one another at the twin openings to the corridors leading from the hall, each large enough to hold an adult inside. It was clear that even businessmen with such heinous connections to the criminal underworld had taste. Biting my tongue and moving on. Okay, so side note here. I love how Gallagher describes the BDSM dungeon. Bizarre restraining devices and unusual sexual accessories. Remember kids, BDSM play should be safe, sane, and consensual, and I'm guessing by the looks of the place and the Don, he abides by none of those. Okay, so Tifa kind of goes full tsundere here for a minute too. It's cute, and it's a little bit awkward, but it's totally ripped from an anime here. It's like Aerith talks to her about, wanting Cloud, and she's like, I don't even like Cloud, Baka. It's just, that's just the way I take it. It's kind of cute. It's kind of cute. It's a nice, relatively wholesome scene in a chapter just full of horrible perversity. I needed that scene. That was my light. That was my canary down the coal mine. I needed that. Thank you, Gallagher. Okay, now I know what you're all waiting for. Who did the Don choose in Gallagher's version? Well, after not so subtly groping Aerith, he chose her. Aerith kind of even led him on. Again, this is interesting turn, not just for Gallagher's depiction of Aerith, but as, the whole story in general. It's kind of taking a turn here. She seems to be seeing being chosen by the Don as kind of like a way to prove herself. It's weird, and she does get cold feet towards the end, but, I mean, hey, that's interesting development. That's nice to see, and that's realistic, too. It's natural. It's not so forced. We see her wanting to prove herself, and then realizing, oh yeah, this is kind of a real thing going on now. So, again, it's a nice subtle touch. There's a cat. I'm not going to edit the cat out because I'm too lazy. I'm sorry. The next few minutes will be cat in the background. Moving on. So, there's a wonderful fight in Scotch's room, with Cloud showing off his barehanded fighting skill. And Gallagher references one of the bouncers as Apps, a nod to the creatures in the sewers. It's a nice little Easter egg, considering I'm guessing the boss fight isn't going to be there. Now, there is a small bit of conversation here where Cloud learns what happened to his sword. It's at the bar, and then he and Tifa go move to rescue Aerith. And we end with the interrogation scene. Now, it's just like in the game, including all of the leg-crossingly visceral threats. That's, he totally deserves it, but, there's a certain level of empathy that that all men have, which just kind of, okay, moving on. This is such, what even is this chapter, guys? I don't often do this. This is mostly a positive, what I like, but one tiny piece of criticism. It's not even major criticism. It's just one thing I have to say. I do feel like the ending here, the last little line, is just a touch rushed and a touch cheesy. To be fair, it's not really Gallagher's fault. The source material ended that entire segment on a really, really cheesy note. But it just, everything else was so visceral and so in the moment, and then there's just haha, here's a lever, boink. It just kind of but anyways, it's still a good scene, it's still a great chapter, but just that one little moment kind of just eh. Okay, so moving on to The Mercenary, moving on to William's version. We're starting in chapter 17. Now, technically we're on the second page. Now, right off the bat, William's version of the dress-up game here is much more fleshed out and truer to the game. He actually takes a lot more time with this section than Gallagher did. Williams, we have them go hunt down for the old guy, which is great, because it includes some of the great lines from this old drunken bastard. I love, in particular, I love the, I own the clothes shop, but I ain't your father line. It's stupid, but it cracks me up every time. I also really like how Williams is going into Eris's head for this one. She's just loving every second of watching Cloud squirm over this, using terms like delicious frequently. It's so mischievous and totally fits the persona Williams has given her. She's kind of like troublemaker Eris at this point. And there's a strange world-building moment here, and also kind of character-building for Eris, where she orders the dressmaker, who, by the way, is named Bruno Stafford, a sober shot. It's purple, and it makes you feel wide awake for a few hours, and then knocks your ass out for a day and a half. It's basically like the bastard version of purple drink mixed with 5-hour energy shot. A quote, please, because I love this scene. Barkeep, a sober shot for my friend here. The barkeep shook his head. Those are illegal. Eris winked at him. The barkeep went out back. A few moments later, he came in with an unlabeled bottle of purple liquid and poured it into a shot glass, which he passed almost unnoticed to Stafford. Stafford tipped the shot glass a little, spilling a few drops, but he downed it in one go. Eris had seen stronger men gag on the drugs inside. He put the shot glass down a little too hard on the bar and held tightly onto it for a few moments. After a short time, his hand relaxed, and he exhaled. No wonder those are illegal, he said, the slur entirely gone. And just before the scene ends, more troublemaker Eris shows up. She decides to snag some of Cloud's money and pay for the drink because, quote, she knew he'd be too scandalized to stop her in time. And, quote, she could read people like that. Like, damn, this is the chaotic neutral version of Eris for sure. So we then go to Big Bro's gym, and instead of squats, we have a boxing match. Decent change, at least it's still there. I love the way this is written, again, with a certain earthiness to it, and not skimping at all in the details of what's happening. It's like, yeah, this guy is openly trans, totally cool with what he is, and he gets his rocks off by watching other dudes beat the hell out of each other. Don't kink shame me, bro. The fight is awesome too, and it serves as an example of Cloud's barehanded fighting prowess. Now wait a second. It's interesting, both authors found a way to include this, but they chose very different settings to first showcase it. And the fight scene? Feels like it was ripped straight out of the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies. Let me give you the quote here. Cloud straightened himself to catch Dareth's next fist. For all his speed, Dareth was weak. Cloud squeezed on the fist. Dareth's mouth started to twitch, then his arm bent, and Cloud knew he had him. He threw Dareth down and brought his foot up. It caught Dareth square in the belly. Okay, he took a moment to clear his mind. Dareth rolled onto his side. Dodged the next 20 hits, then ended. Dareth was almost on his feet. Cloud saw the opening for a free shot and took it, a strong jab to the shoulder that knocked Dareth into the ropes. Or not, he compromised. The scrapper bounced back off the ropes and lunged at Cloud, who sidestepped and sent Dareth stumbling to a stop. Dareth righted himself. His arm was tightly drawn in, a torn muscle from Cloud's last blow, and he was shaking his head, as if concussed. But his head hasn't been hit. He's faking. It goes on like that for a bit, but I'll stop there. You get the point. Cloud reading his enemy in real time is something I love. It's actually something I try to do myself. I try to have the character kind of interpreting the fight as they're in the middle of it. But he does a good job here. Nice scene, nice scene. There's also a tense standoff moment and some foreshadowing, because Big Bro totally recognizes Cloud as being Soldier. It's effective, and it totally goes with the atmosphere, and again, it sets off that payoff at the end of this section. 100% buy it. Now they head back to Stafford's, and the guy is already starting to lose it, but he made Eris a dress, so it's more like a gift from him, which is a nice touch. Cloud explains about how fistfighting is part of the training of a soldier, and there is such a cool little tidbit here. Again, okay, I love this. He mentions how swords are preferred because if you get too close to your enemy, he could theoretically use your own materia against you. What a wonderful observation that totally makes sense in the context of the world. That I like. Well done. There's more hilarity at Eris as she is enjoying her work with Cloud. A little too much, actually. Cloud even accuses her of leering. Now, I'm not saying Eris is necessarily bisexual, but I am saying she sure seems like she's into sissification. My god. I can't help myself. I'm sorry. I know this is... It's a good thing I don't monetize these videos, because damn. You know what this section is. I am just contributing my part to this, okay? I was forced into this, okay? I'm just adding my 2 cents. Okay, moving on. They finally get into Don Corneo's mansion, and up to Tifa, the reveal is pretty similar to Gallagher's. There's a line that was edited out of the book version, but I remember it from the original draft. Far be it to me to question why he chose to edit it out. I think I have an idea, but it was hilarious. Eris looks around the sex dungeon and just goes, kinky. Like, completely unfazed. It's hilarious. I'm guessing Williams probably cut it because maybe, if not out of character, it might not be a good idea to kind of glorify what's going on here. Again, this is not like consensual, fun, kinky times going on down here, so it's probably for the best. I just kind of missed the line for the humor factor, but my God, this episode has all the controversy. Okay, so from there, the same what happened scene is, but it's chapter 18, and it's a reminiscence chapter told from Tifa's perspective. It's the same, what happened after Cloud fell from the plate. Now, listen, I have often said throughout the series there are some scenes I don't want to spoil. This entire chapter is one of them. It's a brilliant recounting of Tifa's events as she basically goes Batman on everybody. She beats the crap out of like 3 people in this chapter, including dealing with Nira and basically tricking her into revealing who she works for. The whole chapter is bad-ass Tifa in glorious large scale. Just read it. Seriously, it's one of the best chapters in the book. And it's only like 5 pages long. The thing could almost be a standalone fiction. It's that good. Some of your best writing yet, Williams. So, in Williams' version, the Don chose Tifa. Okay, I get it, okay? He chose Tifa, I get it. And it's nice the 2 authors kind of they went with the other girl. It's nice, you kind of get to see both sides. But look, I don't bring this up, while this episode is already horrendous to listen to because of all the terrible stuff in it, let me just throw this in here. In my novelization, I sound like I'm drunk, but I really am not, I promise. In my novelization, which is terrible, by the way, don't read it, but in my version, I had the guts to have him choose Cloud, so I could break out that awesome line, "Who's your man? Oh, his name's Barrett." That's a great comeback for that scene. And I get it. I know why you guys both went with not Cloud. You wanted to show the rest of the mansion. You wanted to fight with Koch. I get it. You wanted to show off those scenes. But man, I just like the idea of Cloud being the one chosen. Maybe I'll go back later and make it decent, but probably not. The 8 one is complicated enough, and yeah, moving on. It's fine. And besides, this is good because we actually get the rest of the chapter wrapping up in almost the same vein, but there are some great standouts in Williams' version. For instance, Cloud obtains a hard edge, which sounds really bad in the context of this chapter, but why not? He gets it, which gives him a sword. He gets the sword from one of the boys who are guarding him. It's also hilarious because hard edge is the name of the next upgrade you would normally get in-game if you steal it from the soldiers. So it's a nice Easter egg, and it solves the little swordless problem that he's in. And also, when Cloud goes to save Eris from the dungeon, she's got the dude tied up because of course she does. Now, the very ending is quite different. They tie up the Don, escape, only to be turned over to his goons by Stafford the dressmaker, who basically says, just sorry, I gotta do it. My hands are tied, the Don owns the city. It's a heartbreaking betrayal, but we totally get it. It does admittedly seem a touch tacked on, but I have to say, it at least makes that last ending punch a bit more realistic. Like, I feel more like that payoff was a bit stronger. Again, no disrespect to Gallagher. His version's still perfectly fine and actually really, really good in his own way. But I gotta say, I like the way Williams handled that at the very end there. So conclusion time. This was a really weird and uncomfortable chapter to read at times. Guys, again, I'm being a little bit goofy and performative here, but really, this had some hard stuff in it. But it's great, because it shows how both authors deal with darker and very sensitive subjects. And I feel like you get a decent insight into both authors by watching how they handle these. Williams is like, really, like, totally open and just rushes right through it. And Gallagher kind of gives it a feather touch, like trying not to make a huge deal out of what's going on without sugarcoating anything. So I think they did both do a good job. I need a shower right now after all that. So I will see you next time for part 7. But before we leave, I've got a little sideshow I want you to guys take part in with me. So welcome to the Nibelheim Minicast. This is going to be at the end of the Final Fantasy VII comparison series, and will be just a little bit of me talking about Mo Gallagher's work, the Nibelheim Incident. Yeah, I'm reading through it finally. I feel like I'm not completely far behind. But I need you to know something. This is not going to be nearly as in-depth as Final Fantasy VII comparison series. For that reason, it's a rider to that show and not its own separate thing. I'm not going to be going super in-depth. I'm really just kind of giving a first impressions. And just so you know, I'm not super familiar with that time period of the compilation. I played the original game, played Dirge of Cerberus, actually liked it. It's okay. Watched Advent Children, and I played Crisis Core, but only up to the Nibelheim Incident, like the beginning of the book. Funny reason for that. I totally thought that you would lose access to the Shinra missions, like the side missions in the game, after you got kicked out of Shinra, because that would make sense, but I forgot I was playing a Square Enix game. So yeah, and I would go back and play it, but my PSP's disk drive doesn't work, so yeah. Good thing I have the virtual console on there. Anyways, moving on. So, I have the PDF of this thing. Don't have a physical copy yet. I want to obtain one, but not at the moment. But even the PDF, first off, just the product itself is beautiful. Of course, you've got the amazing cover by A.J. Haitley, and the Crimson Sun artwork inside the scene illustrations are just phenomenal. It's such beautiful line work, and they're like etchings. That's how neat they are. And it makes the entire product just glow. It's so well put together. So mad kudos to both those artists, by the by. Now, as far as the actual content, I've read the prologue and the first chapter. Very short read, very short chapters. It's a novella, of course. The prologue is interesting because we get a little bit of Sung. It starts off with Sung observing Aerith, and the scene I did not know about, where Aerith is courted by the original Avalanche, who I gather from what I've learned in the meantime is not necessarily the most scrupulous force in the world, or at least far more militant in their intent. So it's interesting we get that little, I think Gallagher actually mentioned in his own podcast about it, kind of a bookend to the incident with Sung, who's going to, of course, wrap things up at the end here. If Last Order holds true. I also saw Last Order, so there's that, haha. I gotta order On the Way to a Smile and The Kids Are Alright. I gotta read those. Side note, sorry, moving on. So we get that, and we also get a great setup for the book. Prologue should really set a tone, or at least give us a theme. What he does is interesting here. He just throws us right into the action. He just has, okay, yeah, something's going down at Nibelheim. Bad things are happening. Get on it. And it's good. It ends the prologue. I'm like, okay, what's going on? And of course, it's stupid. I know what's going on, but still, if you can make me have that reaction on something I already know, that's a good sign. Chapter 1 is, I describe it as the last time on Crisis Core. We kind of get a rundown of what happened. Of course, Angela and Genesis dying, and, well, quote-unquote, dying. There's a lot of up in the air about that. And the whole briefing with Zack and Sephiroth, I really liked. I'm writing Final Fantasy VIII. I love a good briefing scene, okay? I think it can tell a lot about characters and inform the scenes really well. But the thing I like most, and this is, if I recall correctly, I played Crisis Core like once, but if I recall correctly, this is definitely true to what happens in the game, but it's still great to see how Gallagher makes it his own. In particular, the scene where Sephiroth goes, just so you know, things are probably gonna go down here that I can't undo. We might be enemies by the time this is over. It's such a great line, and it's such great tension. And again, all just build up for the main event. Which I love, and you've got me hooked. And again, if you can get me hooked about something that I already know the story to, you're doing your job right. It's a freaking blast. I'll be knocking these little mini sections out at the end of these Final Fantasy VII comparison series, since I'm reading the book alongside the other two now. I'm reading 3 of them at once. If you're wondering why my Fan Fridays are featuring less fan fiction, this is why. I am reading 3 of them right now. I'll have to eventually read Death as part of the process again, or at least finish what I started reading. That was a good one by Licorice All Sorts. I started reading it. Check it out when you get a chance. It's pretty damn good. And that'll be it. One last stupid joke I have to comment on. The first part takes place on September 21st, and I had that Earth, Wind, and Fire song stuck in my head all day, so thank you for that. I know it's not your fault, those are the canon dates, but I blame you anyways. No bloopers this time, because I only made 1 blooper, and it wasn't funny to listen to, so, nah. And I really am gonna go take a shower now, because it's 9 in the morning, 10 in the morning, wow, daylight savings time. Okay, peace.